He was my patient for 15 years. He became an obsession with me until I realized that there was neither conscience nor reason, and he wasn't even remotely human. An hour ago, I fired 6 bullets into him, and he just walked away. I'm talking about the real possibility that he is still out there. This is your spooky spot on NECA Toys Halloween 2, Retro Cloth Laurie Strode, and Dr. Sam Loomis. From the classic 1981 sequel, Halloween 2, Dr. Loomis and Laurie Strode stand approximately 8 inches tall and come dressed in cloth clothing. Each figure is highly detailed and fully posable, featuring authorized likeness of Donald Pleasance and Jamie Lee Curtis. Just before we slip on somebody's dripping blood puddle. Wait. How about we do some size comparisons? Of course, we are going to be looking at Retrocloth Loomis and Retrocloth Laurie, so it would make then some sense to bring in the Retrocloth Michael Myers. My memory isn't what it used to be. After all, that's what happens when you slip on somebody's blood puddle, but I don't recall at the time that looking at the first Retrocloth Loomis, or the first video looking at Loomis and Laurie, I actually had Michael Myers available at the time. His whereabouts were unknown. I shot him 6 times, and he just got up and vanished. Already he was arrested by the police. It's ridiculous. But I don't think I had the Michael Myers, so I'm certainly going to rectify things in this review. And I thought also for some fun comparisons, even though she's not really of the same toy line. Here she is next to a much smaller, well, it's quite the size difference. How she looks next to the Halloween 2018 Ultimate Laurie Strode, a figure that we also just recently had a look at as well. Checking out the figure's accessories. Starting first, let's have a look at the pumpkin. Now, this isn't the same pumpkin as what we got with the Ultimate Halloween 2 Michael Myers. I just so happen to have it right here. Wow, it's almost like you got everything prepared this time around. I do. Thank you. Thank you for noticing that. This one actually was from the opener of the film. And of course, as it opens and reveals the skeleton inside, that was pretty cool. This one actually is based more on the VHS artwork or the poster. And I actually like it. I'm glad to see that they included it and just didn't decide to give us a similar version of this one here. If I could offer up any little bit of criticism, and my criticism is very, very small, while I do like the discoloration of the pumpkin, it looks like it's rotting. I wish it was a little bit brighter. Just because the one on the VHS cover looks a lot brighter of an orange than this. The skull looks fantastic, though. I like the darker colors that they use for the recessed areas of the eyes, the nasal cavity, and the inside of the mouth. A nice-looking pumpkin. Just again, I wish it was a little bit brighter, that's all. The figures also come included with a couple of guns. Now, the guns aren't identical to one another. They are different. A little easier to kind of spot the differences between the two as I hold them up so you can see here. The one on the top, actually, is Loomis's go-to gun. That's a Smith & Wesson Model 15. But this one right here is not actually a Smith & Wesson. This one that he gives to Laurie is a Colt Trooper Mark III. You can kind of see the difference between the two when you're looking at the barrel. You can see that this one for Loomis has a higher point on the end of the barrel, whereas this one's a little more squared off. Handles look also like they're a little bit different from one another. Loomis's, well, the one he gives to Laurie, notably has a little more of an orange handle. Very, very subtle differences, but again, not the same gun. And one good thing is, at least, is that both the figures have gripping hands, so you can give Loomis the gun, for example. What do we do again? Fire a warning shot? He's shooting inside of a car. That can't be right. I actually just recently watched Halloween 2 again. It's been a while since I watched Halloween 2. I forgot how much I liked that movie. It's always one I tend to skip over in favor of like Halloween 4 and Halloween 5. Why would you skip Halloween 2 for something with Tina in it? I don't know. But that's Loomis's. And then we can do the exact same thing with Laurie. Go ahead and pick the figure up. And we'll give her the Colt. That just fits again into her hand. The plastic that they use for the hands are generally quite soft, so it's a little easier to get them in hand. And you can get her with the gun in her hand as well. Somehow a teenager that's never fired off a gun successfully, dead shot, both in Michael Myers' eyes. Although some would say that it was shot above his eyes, and that's how he's still able to see, but that's Halloween logic for you. The figures also come included. I have a little bit of difficulty with Laurie's standing. I'll talk more about that in a second. Her ankles seem to be developing this real loose problem. Maybe we'll just have her, you know what, we'll have her crawling. Help me! Help! And then, of course, Loomis. We'll talk more about Laurie in a second. Loomis comes also included with his lighter. It's time, Michael. It is. The lighter, actually, you can see, is already molded into his hand. Unfortunately, the downside of having the lighter in his hand is that a little bit of the flesh color from the fingers has found its way onto the yellow Bic lighter. I like the fact that it does have at least the flame sticking up like that. And it does swap to his hand, but it doesn't actually swap to this hand. It swaps to this one here. So you either decide for yourself to have him with the gun in his hand, or you have to choose for yourself to have the lighter in his hand. And just to remove that from his existing hand, go ahead and just yank that from the socket. Yanking is probably not the best word to be using. You more or less want to twist it just to ensure that the peg doesn't break off on you. And then put the other one in, just like that. There you have Loomis displayed with the lighter. His other hand is a bit strange, though. It looks like it wants to hold a lighter, but it doesn't obviously have the means to hold a lighter. I think the reasoning why they did it like this is sort of it looks like Loomis is injured at the end of the movie. My only guess. That's why they've sculpted. I kind of wish that they did at least give him either a relaxed hand or a gripping hand, because it seems so strange and out of place to give him this hand. Again, unless you kind of have him lunged forward like this. Maybe what we'll do is we'll talk about Loomis first while Laurie is crawling around on the ground. She has very little lines, in fact, the entire movie. First of all, let's have a look at the head sculpt for Dr. Sam Loomis. A really good-looking head sculpt. I think it's the better of the two. This is also in prelude, I suppose, to the Ultimate Loomis and the Ultimate Michael Myers set that we are going to be getting from NECA Toys, but this is the one that we got before that. And I gotta say, like, this is a really nice kind of introductory to what NECA Toys was capable of doing with a Loomis. Now, we did actually have the Night He Came Home set, which I did review many years ago and have since sold. That was the first Loomis that we had, but it had very little in the way of articulation. It was basically just a staction body. He does wear his trench coat, but his trench coat, unfortunately, to remove all the intrigue of it, if you remove the jacket, as you can see, he's sleeveless and quite muscular as well. Loomis, I had no idea, was pumping iron behind the scenes. It's a shame, though, he doesn't have a full sleeve to his jacket so that you could have actually taken off the trench coat if you wanted to. But really, if you begin basing it from Halloween 2, Loomis is just wearing his jacket through the course of the movie. So even though it is a bit disappointing that you can't actually have him with the suit underneath, I mean, you're probably going to be displaying him with the trench coat anyways. And then maybe you'll go ahead and pop the collar as well. Loomis likes to have his popped collar. As for the jacket material that they use, it's a pretty dense material. It's got a lot of starch. I think back in the day you would add starch. Was it starch? When you ironed shirts to make them a little more pressed. It certainly feels like it's a very pressed jacket. It's tailored generally quite nicely. Seamed down the front, and even to the fact that it has pockets, but they're not real pockets. They're sort of imaginary pockets stitched on the side there as well. It's a nice material, but I feel like the material is just really rigid. That's the word I was looking for. It's very rigid. The material, however, underneath for the jacket seems a little bit more softer of the two. Again, it's got pockets. This one at least has like something you could put into it. Technically, you could put really the gun, I guess, if you wanted to. But the gun just would barely fit in there. Just get like the end nozzle in. That's about it. That's about the only thing you'd be able to get in there. He does have a couple of pockets on the top as well, but again, more imaginary pockets than anything else. And the jacket actually is Velcroed. If you wanted to, you could open up to reveal that Loomis is casual underneath. He doesn't really like to tuck his shirt in, along with a tie. Now, the tie, unfortunately, is attached to the Velcro. So again, why is this video turning into undressing Loomis? You can undress him and realize, first of all, Loomis, once again, is very ripped underneath. But they're also using the new articulated retrocloth bodies. That means, and the reason, this is why I wanted to do this, not to undress, not to strip down Loomis, but is to more to show you that he does have articulation on the torso. And he does also have the new articulation in the ankle, which I'm glad to see that they did do that. Let's fix up his tie, do back up his jacket, and then just fix his jacket, make sure he's back to normal there. Yeah, overall, I'm really happy with this Loomis. I would suspect they're probably going to use a very similar head sculpt for the one that we're going to be getting that Ultimate release packed along with Michael Myers. But I think, again, like this one sets the bar pretty high. I'm happy with this one. I'm not, like, again, like the jacket material feels like it's a little stiff. You know, it's a little stiff. It doesn't have a lot of give to it, especially from the front. The sleeves aren't so bad. It feels like it's almost even a softer material. I feel like they may have even added something to the material on the front of the jacket just to make it a little bit more, like, again, stiff, pressed, and ironed flat. For the articulation on Loomis, his head rotates all the way around. It's on a ball joint after all. Head looks down, up, quite high up actually, and you can also move the head back and forth as well. Arms do come out at a 90-degree angle. It's kind of strange, really, because when you're looking at how high the shoulders are of the jacket, it really does make his arms look like they're really sunken further down. You can bring the arms forward, and you can bring the arms back. You can swivel at the bicep, double bend on the elbow, and the hands rotate all the way around, with also a servicing hinge. There we go, right in the wrist there. Upper torso is on a ball joint. The legs split out. Forward and back on the legs. There's a swivel actually at the top of the thigh. There is a bend at the knee, provided I can actually find it. And there is, thank goodness, articulation in the ankle. So not only could you do this before with retrocloth figures, but that was really it. Now, at least, you can also do this as well. And that certainly helps to stabilize the figure. And Loomis, unlike a fallen Laurie who's crawling on the ground right now, Loomis can actually stand fine, easy on his own. Now let's have a look at Laurie. And again, Laurie is a good-looking figure, but I have, first of all, like some real serious issues with her ankles. It's using, first of all, the older retrocloth bodies. Female bodies, we don't have as many examples to pull from, but it's using the old retrocloth style in the sense that you only hinge the feet back and forth. She has, unfortunately, no ankle pivot, which is really a shame. I wish the figure could have had an ankle pivot. Let's have a look at her head sculpt. I don't feel very confident having her with a gun in her hand. Sorry, Laurie. I'm just going to take that out of your hand, and we're going to put that to the side. Having a closer look at Laurie's head sculpt, it's pretty good. I do feel like there's room for improvement. Like the face seems really long. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis has a long face to start off with, but I feel like it's either too narrow or it's too long, and either one of those is throwing off the head sculpt. And again, just to do a comparison, even though she's a little bit older here, I think it's a good example to compare it next to this one, because even though this one's a little bit older, I think it's a better looking head sculpt, closer to looking like Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, there's elements here that I do feel look like, Laurie Strode, and it does look like Jamie Lee Curtis, but I feel like this one, short of the fact, again, yeah, she's much older, looks a lot more like the actress. It would have been interesting, certainly, as well, that this one could have had removable hair, because, I don't know if you already know this, to go back and do Halloween 2, Jamie Lee Curtis already had shorter hair by then, so they had to give her a very noticeable wig. It would have been funny if you would have been able to take off the hairpiece and find shorter hair on Laurie Strode underneath. The head sculpt, though, like I said, there's something just slightly, very slightly off on it, but I think it's a very serviceable-looking Laurie Strode. She does have the hospital gown on. The thing about Halloween Kills, though, Laurie Strode also in the hospital, Jamie Lee Curtis stressed that she did not want to wear a hospital gown again, being the fact that in Halloween 2, that's all she wore in the entire movie. So that's one of the reasons why she doesn't wear a hospital gown in Halloween Kills. But yeah, she is wearing a hospital gown, as you can see. It's got the blood, I should say, on the top of the shoulder. It's a little harder to see until I, of course, lift up the sleeve. But at least they did bandage off the top of her arm, like she does have in the movie. She does also have the little hospital band. Doesn't have a name or anything on it, but at least they did go the mile of giving you a little hospital band there that she can wear on her wrist. Does have the bandaged hand on the other side. The hands do look a little big, and I think probably what the culprit of that is the fact her wrists are so small. You don't generally see arms that much on retrocloth figures because they're generally wearing sleeves over top of it. So this is unfortunately one of those cases where they just can't hide the fact that she has a much slender looking body. We can spin around the back of the gown. The gown is tied up on the back as it would be in the film. And it does have a print done to the dress as well. I'm only going to lift this up simply to show you that they did sculpt a full body underneath. Not for you perverts out there, but it's more just to show you that they didn't, unlike B. Arthur, which was funny when we looked at the B. Arthur from the Golden Girls retrocloth figures, that she was using a man's body. I mean, again, you wouldn't be able to use a man's body here for Laurie Strode. She does have the whiter underwear on, just a straight swivel. It's interesting, actually, that they did sculpt a belly button on this figure. I'm trying to think of when they would have ever decided for themselves, let's make a retrocloth female body that at some point is going to need to show her midriff. I don't know. At some point, though, they decided they had to put the little belly button in there. Apparently, Laurie Strode is an innie. Bare legs for the rest of it. She does have the bandages down below, at least only on the one foot. The other foot, as you can see, is completely bare. Now, again, I have some real problems with the figure standing. I can always rectify that. Let's just fix her, make her look a little more presentable. I can always fix that by really just using a display stand, like something that NECA always puts out display stands. I have probably like at least a dozen or so. I can just attach it to the bottom of her feet, and that's certainly going to fix the problem of her balancing. But if I was to say put her on like a shelf, she seems to want to kind of lean forward. You probably already saw this already in this review. The feet are prone to leaning forward, and there seems no stopping point either, that when you put her down on a surface, like she just leans forward, and the feet completely allow her to do that as well. Looking at the articulation on Laurie Strode now. Again, one last look at the head sculpt. Am I right? It's good, but there's something. It just needs to be fixed just a little bit. Maybe make her face a little fuller. Maybe it's not so much the length of her head. It's just the fact that the face has to be just a little wider. Anyways, looking at the head sculpt and looking at the articulation on Laurie Strode, the head rotates all the way around. It moves up a little bit, just a little bit, moves down, and you can also rock it back and forth, also just a little bit. The arms come out. Again, you can rotate them forward and back. She does have only a single hinge on the elbow, no swivel or anything there, and she swivels as well around the wrists. And you can also hinge it. I was having such a tough time trying to find that word. Hinging it back and forth. Only a straight swivel, just a straight swivel in her torso. Legs split out. You bring legs forward and back. She does only have a single hinge on the knee. And then she does have, already mentioned, somewhat of a problematic ankle. I'm sure there maybe is something I can add to the ankles to make them a little tighter. Because like right now, at the beginning of the review, it wasn't so bad. But it seems like you have to really get her in a proper stance. Because if you don't, if you have her leaning forward just a little bit, even just a little bit, the figure, there we go. The figure topples over completely. And one last time, we can bring in Michael Myers there. Generally, I'd like to display all three figures together. First of all, because they're retrocloth figures. Second of all, they're from Halloween 2, after all. And I think they all look really good together. I can't replicate this look, unfortunately, with the Ultimate figures. While we are getting ourselves an Ultimate Loomis and an Ultimate Halloween 2 Michael Myers, a second time for that Ultimate Michael Myers. We don't have an Ultimate Laurie Strode. I hope that's something that they're going to fix down the road, because we already have an Ultimate Laurie Strode from the Halloween 2018. I'd like to also see NECA Toys do an Ultimate Laurie Strode from Halloween 2 as well. Well, isn't that just perfect? Prior to getting everything set up here, getting the figures spinning around on the rotisserie, I had Michael Myers with scalpel in hand. I know, the scalpel isn't in his hand right now, and sure enough, I bang Michael Myers, putting him on the turntable. And the scalpel would have been easier just to fall on the table in front of me, where I could pick it up, put it back into his hand. But no, it landed somewhere on the floor in front of me. I'm looking down right now as I'm talking away. I don't see it. It's small, and I'm hoping my little tiny kitty hasn't picked it up and run away with it. I'm going to have to track that down. Anyways, though, I've got the figures on display how I normally have them on display. Loomis wielding his Bic highlighter. Laurie Strode, a teenager who somehow dead shot twice. Right in the eyes. And then, of course, Michael Myers just swinging aimlessly with his blood dripping out of his eye sockets. I love the look of these figures. And actually, this is nice to be able to go back and look at these figures again, leading up to that eventual 2-pack release that NECA Toys are going to be planning with the Ultimate Loomis. Finally an articulated Sam Loomis. And that Ultimate Halloween 2 Michael Myers. It's not the same one as what we got already. It's got a different head sculpt, and it doesn't look like it's either going to be the head sculpt from the retro cloth release. It's going to be a brand new head sculpt, so I'm really excited to see what that one's going to look like. But finally, we get ourselves an Ultimate Sam Loomis. So if you're not too keen on the idea of a retro cloth release of Loomis that we looked at in this review, that Ultimate Sam Loomis, again, super excited. And you can actually take that one off, and he has a full jacket underneath. Laurie Strode, still nothing, though. We have the Halloween 2018 Ultimate Laurie Strode, but that's if you like the Halloween 2018 canon, and that's also if you like an older Laurie Strode, but we don't have a younger Laurie Strode. Still, it's difficult to kind of do that 78 stuff. They have to kind of tiptoe around it. But at the very least, I hope that we, at some point, can get ourselves an Ultimate Laurie Strode from Halloween 2, or even Halloween H2O. My preferred timeline for Laurie Strode, not Halloween 2018 personally. What do you guys think of this set? Let me know down below in the comment section whether you picked it up for yourself or just based on this review, and this review alone. Today's spookerific review, leading now up to Halloween. I think we're like one day away. Silver Shamrock. What do you guys think of the set? Today, like I said, spooky spot related. We had a look at the Halloween 2 retro cloth, Sam Loomis, Laurie Strode, and we brought in Michael Myers, who ended up losing his scalpel. I should have just put that on the table in the first place, put the figure on the turntable, put then the scalpel in his hand. I shouldn't have not had it in his hand the whole time. I just knew. I kept telling myself, I'm going to knock it out of his hand, and it's going to end up lost. And when it ended up happening, it fell out of his hand, and it got lost. Lost for at least now. If you guys are new to this channel, and you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and keep your peepers peeled because there will be more spookerific reviews coming your way in the somewhat not so distant, because again, we're getting under the wire. Today, at the time that I'm posting this, might very well even be Halloween. So hopefully, if you guys are seeing this video on Halloween, that you guys have yourself a safe and healthy, happy Halloween. Lots of stuff coming your way, guys. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.